Hi. So when I started as a freshman at Truman State University, I wanted to study nutrition. I was perplexed by the idea that the very thing designed to give us our health, food, was making so many of us sick. The more I studied human health and nutrition, though, the more I learned about environmental issues and how very interconnected the two are. My sophomore year, I switched to an environmental studies major, and I started volunteering for the Green Thumb Project, which is a local nonprofit in Kirksville that does garden-based education with the Kirksville School District. I was captivated by garden-based education because at the time, I was feeling very overwhelmed and pessimistic about the problems that we are facing today and the future state of our planet. But garden-based education provides hope for a bright future for both humans and the environment. So this is the outdoor classroom where I was a garden teacher for the last 3 years. I taught kindergarten through 5th graders here. And garden-based education is all about hands-on experiential learning. Almost any subject can be applied through the outdoor classroom. Schools can take curriculum that they're already teaching inside and use gardens to create experiences for students that help them to really learn and internalize and remember the information. Students learn better when they take part in garden-based education. And that's because experiential learning is effective. Think about it. Why is it that you remember that combining baking soda and vinegar creates an explosive chemical reaction? It's because when you combined them, you experienced an explosion, and that made it memorable, right? Well, gardens make it really easy for us to create these memorable learning experiences for students. I always like to start my garden classes with just 5 minutes of nature journaling. Students were able to pick a spot in the outdoor classroom that they would go to journal from each week. They were challenged to sit and really listen and observe with all of their senses, their surroundings, and how they were changing from week to week. This gave students an opportunity to practice being scientists with their observations, but it also gave them an opportunity to take 5 minutes in their day and slow down and recharge and just listen in the stillness of nature, which can be kind of hard to get kids to do otherwise, but I think is really beneficial for them to have during the school day. From there, we would have a garden lesson tied to an objective from the school's curriculum, and we would use a garden activity to apply it. So let's take an example. Osmosis, the movement of water from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. We can learn about osmosis from beans. If you take dried beans and you soak them in water, they puff up because the water is moving inside the beans, right? Well, any experienced gardener can tell you that if you soak beans before you plant them, they sprout faster. So this can be turned into a science experiment where we plant soaked beans and dried beans side by side, and we measure the difference in sprouting time and plant growth. When we're creating the garden beds, we learn how to use garden tools. And students work together to measure how far between and how deep to plant the beans. We can learn about the soil and what nutrients need to be in the soil for optimal plant growth. And we can contribute to that through our composting. We learn what types of nutrients are in the beans that grow that are really good for humans. And for historical and cultural context, which is always present in food, we can talk about how the Native Americans planted and used this specific type of bean. So over the course of just one lesson in the garden, students have the opportunity to learn so much in so many different ways, right? Without tests or forced memorization, students have the opportunity to learn just for the sake of learning, and they're able to find areas of strength and areas for growth for themselves. At the end of a garden lesson, I would always encourage students to try a garden harvest. Okay, I want to do a quick survey of the audience. Raise your hand if you enjoy eating kale. Okay, there's a few of you. Now keep your hand up if you enjoyed eating kale as a kid. Oh my goodness. Is that one? Nope. Nobody. Yeah, okay, so leafy greens are not very popular with kids, right? But believe it or not, over 80% of my garden students who were part of the process of growing kale tried it and said that they liked it. When they're part of that process, they have to work hard and wait patiently, which is not something that is common in our culture of instant gratification. And the reward for that is the garden harvest. So even if it's something typically unpopular, like kale, they are excited to have that reward for their work. Planting food breaks the barrier to getting kids to eat vegetables. And that's something that we really need right now, because so many of our kids are struggling with diet-related chronic diseases like obesity. And kids are supposed to be healthy. Eating vegetables can be an acquired taste, and the more we eat them, the more we like them. So we know that garden-based education is a wonderful educational tool, and it can plant the seeds for lifelong healthy eating. But in my opinion, the most powerful aspect is that it teaches about life and what makes life work well. So in a garden, what we're really looking at is an ecosystem. I would always refer to the garden as the garden ecosystem, because we have the rain garden and the pollinator garden and the surrounding woodland habitats. We have our composting, even the things we can't see, like the CO2 and the oxygen and the micronutrients in the soil, right? And these are all working together to grow our healthy garden plants, which in turn create health for humans. So this connects a lot of really important dots. And in the garden, students are a part of creating a healthy ecosystem. They learn what humans' role is in nature and how we can have a specifically positive impact on our environment. And I think that's a really motivating and empowering message, rather than just focusing on how humans are harming the environment. We can talk about how we can specifically help it. Gardens. When students are in the garden, they can see that it's successful because of the interaction of all of the different parts. So when resources are used and reused and stored and transferred in many different ways over time, we see that life thrives, right? And we take this and we look at how humans are interacting with the environment, and it becomes not about being good or bad or right or wrong, but when we're using resources faster than they can be recreated, when we're using more than what we need, and when we're done, we're putting them into landfill sinks, it just goes against what we know makes life work best. And in a garden, we have so many examples of abundance, right? So let's take the sunflower, for example. We can plant one sunflower seed, and that grows a sunflower that in turn produces 2,000 sunflower seeds. That's abundance. An apple tree can produce 1,000 apples, and that's more than any family or classroom can reasonably eat. So we see how gardens produce abundance. And we hear a lot today that there are too many humans and there's not enough food. In Kirksville and many other parts of the planet, we have a lot of issues with food insecurity, which means that we don't have enough healthy food. We don't have access to enough healthy food. And that's a message of scarcity. So why don't we grow more food when we know that it can create so much abundance? I think it's really easy to be pessimistic about the future state of the planet, especially when you know how fast we are using our resources and polluting the environment. But I challenge you to think about how we can take what we know about what makes a garden ecosystem work so well and apply it to our lives. This is what we do in garden-based education. How can we become healthier and create abundance in our lives? Dr. Seuss says in the Lorax, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. And we care about things that we understand and are connected to. Gardens create this connection and understanding. So I know a lot of you in this room are students, and I challenge you to think about how can you take what you are studying and apply it and create ecosystem-minded solutions in your field. How can we reintegrate nature into the things that we are doing in our everyday lives? If you care, I challenge you to take this lesson of how life works and how we can create abundance and build a better future. Thank you.